Oh, the YouTube is back on.
It says we're live streaming on YouTube, so
Right, Randy.
be mindful of your conversation.
Issues. You might have seen I've been around, but back when I got started, there was a righteous sound. It doesn't matter what I've been through, I'll still be digging on James Brown. More things change, the more they stay the same. It may be a different age, but I'm on the same page. There's one thing that I found, I still be digging on James Brown. I had an attitude adjustment, I did some psychotherapy, I helped myself to some self-help, I dabbled in some ESP. Though my world is ever changing, then I moved from town to town. Doesn't matter where I've been to, I'll still be thinking on James Brown. You know, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It may be a different age, but I'm on the same page. There's one thing that I found, I still be thinking on James Brown. You got your rap and your disco, you got your drum machine, you got your already gangster, you got your grungy scene, you got your state of the art, you got your digital sound. It doesn't matter where it's going to, I still be thinking on James Brown. Take it to the bridge, it'll get you where you live. When there's water on the ground, you can still get out of town. Still be thinking on James Brown.
Recently have any contact with Trustee Ash or Trustee Criswell?
Haven't heard from either. We'll follow up.
Thank you.
I think Don just came on.
Yeah, Don's on. So the only one we're missing then is Trustee Criswell.
Yes, sir.
Evening, Trustee Ash. We are live at this moment, just so you know.
Thank you.
And then Dr. Daniels, if I may, just for the trustees, if you notice in your email, you'll have a revised agenda for this evening. So we're going to start an open session probably for about 30 minutes or so, and then we'll move into executive session.
Vice Chair Criswell is joining us now. Dr. Daniels, all trustees are now present.
Dr. Daniels, you're muted.
Thank you. I'll call the meeting to order, the special board meeting of the trustees, April 7, 2021. And notice that all board members are present. So the first order of business this evening is fiscal year 2022 preliminary budget considerations from Dr. Mosier. Dr. Mosier.
Thank you, Dr. Daniels, and good evening, everyone. It's nice to see everyone this evening. We do want to spend some time talking about some of our preliminary recommendations that we have for FY22, and our CFO, Mr. Mike Beach, has joined us as well. We've had some preliminary conversation on this, but if you don't mind, I will go ahead and share my screen with you and walk through a PowerPoint presentation that lays out kind of where we are as an institution and things that will have an impact on our budget as we move forward and want to be thinking about from both the administrative perspective, but also as the Board of Trustees. So I will go ahead and share my screen now. Get this launched. Just bear with me a second. All right. So at this point, you should see the intro slide to the PowerPoint presentation. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, we're seeing it, Greg.
Oh, okay. So as I mentioned, we're just going to walk through some of the items that we need to be looking at for next year's budget as we create that and plan for it. Of course, one of the things that is a key driver to our budget is our enrollment. So we just want to take kind of a longitudinal look at enrollment for KCKCC over the course of the last 10 years. I know there are a lot of numbers on this page. I don't expect you to be looking at every one of them, but what we have done is in the yellow columns, highlighted if the numbers are positive, they are green. And if they are positive more than, I believe, 10%, then they are green and bold. If the numbers are negative, then they are in red. And then over the bolding on that may not be exactly the percentage that I was looking at, but basically we're looking at red and green numbers, make it easy to pull out. And if I can have you focus your attention to the bottom of the chart, we're looking at a 3, 5, 7, and a 10-year difference in enrollment. So we are experiencing a downward trend in enrollment. I think it's worth noting that the 3 years prior to the COVID outbreak, we were basically flat and had started on an upward trend with our enrollment overall. So we are having an impact from COVID that I think has really kind of interrupted what our normal trend line would have been. This chart looks at enrollment in a little more simplified term. And as you can see, in academic year 2021, we've experienced a significant decline due to the COVID virus. I do like to look at the numbers from different aspects to see if we can recognize where we're doing well and where we're doing not so well. So the chart on the bottom, the numbers on the bottom, we're looking at a couple different cohorts, 3 different cohorts of students. So the first is the first time entering the institution. And we have the number of students and then the percentage. These are students that are identified in iPads, so the numbers do not look large, but it's because it's first time, full-time degree declared majors. So on first time entering students, we've remained rather flat, around 18-19%. The new transfer are students that are transferring to us that have college credits from another institution. And we've been up and down, that fluctuates, that's fairly normal for an institution. And then the third row is returning, and I've highlighted that to draw our attention to that. Those are students that would be returning to us after 1 year of being with us from fall to fall. And as you'll see, we in 2015 we're at 74%, 2018 at 67%, and 2020 at 65%. So about an 8% decline in returning students. Those that have graduated have been taken out of this number. So this does show that we do need to work on helping our students get through the second year of their education. So as we work on our strategic enrollment management plan, that will be an area of focus for us. This year, our revenue for just tuition and fees alone is down about $1.9 million. This chart looks at enrollment trends by high school and non-high school. If we look at the yellow bar, yellow line, we're looking at non-high school credit-bearing classes. So that's our adult population or non-high school population in credit classes, not customized training or not continuing education, etc. So over the 5-year trend, we're looking at about a 21% decrease. If we stick with the non-high school credit and go down to the gray bar at the bottom, you'll see it's about a 24% decrease, and the HC is in head count versus credit hours. And then the other chart, we see this nice, beautiful blue line, which we would love to see all of our charts look like that. It's 102% increase in high school students, and that's by head count. And then down below in the orangish color bar is high school students for credit hour counts. I did get information regarding race ethnicity reporting, but I haven't had an opportunity to put it in this report yet. So I will send that to you separately because I do like to look at the success rate of our students from a variety of different slices. This chart looks at all the 19 community colleges in the state. We are highlighted, so it pulls us out and it's easy to find. And we actually have a very good retention number. This is fall to fall retention. And I mentioned that we need to look at our returning students, and I'll explain some of the difference there. And so for in 2018, which is the last full year reported and verified, we have our institutional percentage of 61.5% students retained, which is good. And then when we count in transfer students, we're at 65%. So if we did not retain a student, but they transferred to another institution, and let's say a 4-year institution, those students are the 4% that are over here. So we're 4th in the state for our community colleges, and I think that's a great place to be. This chart looks at, again, the 19 community colleges in the state in regards to graduation. If you look at the bottom number here, again, so we're looking at iPads data, total cohort, so that first time, full time. There are 2 columns, so if we jump to 2017, graduating at 100% time, we're at 23.2%. So let's say a Associate of Arts student graduating in a 2-year period is at 23%. We all know that our students have different struggles in their lives and may not be able to take a full load all the time. So the more normal number to look at is at 150% of graduation time. So for a 2-year student, it would be 3 years. And we're at 26.9%. So we are lower on our graduation. Again, that tells us that we need to be looking to help our students as they get closer and closer to their degree. And how can we help them complete? So we'll be looking at that in our strategic enrollment management plan as well.
Greg,
Yes.
show my ignorance here. Can you tell me tell us what iPads is?
Yes, it's institutional. It's a post-secondary education.
That's okay. Is it a national organization that does this or statewide?
It is. Yes, it is. I'm sorry, I can't think of the iPad right now.
Sorry, yeah.
It's the
Dr. Mojer, it's Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System.
Oh,
so much. You're so
You're
good.
welcome.
So fancy.
very good. Thanks, Risla. So
Good
that's
saying.
a national collective agency?
It is. Every year, every post-secondary institution reports their data to iPads. And it is sliced and diced a multiple of ways. So we have tons of data that comes to us through iPads. It's all collected in the same manner. So there's more consistency to it as long as the institutions are reporting the data correctly.
Thank you.
So, yes, thank you for that question.
So, and I don't need an answer on this tonight, but who validates that the data that's submitted by each of the institutions is actually accurate? Are there controls in place, or I'd like to know a little bit more about that. Maybe not tonight, but you could maybe.
Yeah, I could share though. The timing is good. So every institution has to validate their data. For example, we just validated our data for this last year. Mike Beach works on the financials. Dr. Mahir works on a lot of the enrollment numbers, working with Dr. Wilson and otherwise. And then I get together with both Mike and Dr. Mahir and look at the numbers. I always do a comparison to previous years, and we look for any anomalies or things that have a significant change, and then we'll dive deeper into those if need be. But the president or chancellor of each institution is responsible for signing and validating that the data that's submitted to iPads is correct.
And Greg, again, these numbers don't include, do they not include our students that earn certificates?
These numbers are, I believe, and I can confirm with Dr. Mahir that these are 2-year degree seeking students.
Yeah. So the fact that we have a large number of successful students in technical programs isn't included.
I believe that to be correct with this report. That's one of the difficulties with the federal reporting and with IPEDS. They look at the cohort as first-time, full-time degree-seeking students.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times this report is only looking at, I think right now, probably 35% of our entire student population.
Yeah.
So they're working on that, but that's the only way that they can keep it consistent across the nation right now. So yeah, it's an indicator, but it doesn't tell the whole story of your institution, but every institution on this report is reporting on that same cohort of students. So there's still comparative value to it, even though it doesn't tell the whole story of your institution.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. So this is just a comparison of the overall chart looks at our community college partners in the state of Kansas. This inset looks at us as comparative to our comp group. Our comp group is like institutions across the country that have similar characteristics when we look at how we define ourselves as an institution. And we have 33 institutions in our comp group. So looking at 150% graduation rate, you can see some, we're a little bit lower in some areas, and then, we pop up a little bit above, and then we had a big increase in 2018, which has not been reported yet. So you'll see the 27% here, which is this 26.9% in this overall chart. By being an urban institution, that's one of the characteristics that does have some significance on the level of success in this category. So next, I want to just move to some of the just kind of raw numbers as comparison, and many of these are with our other 18 community college sister institutions in the state. This data comes from the Kansas Board of Regents report, and you can see the source at the bottom. So each year we report what our expenditures are. It may not be exactly what our budget is. If you look on the top right-hand corner, 2019 budget for KCKCC was $80.2 million. So we do plan to put money in reserve, so that's why there's that $5 million difference. So if we look at total expenses of an institution, in 2019, we expended $75 million. And we're pretty consistent with that. We went up a little bit in 2018 and in 2019 from 17. The other institutions that are beige are some of the other colleges that the board you have been asking questions about, because there are our peer institutions in relationship to size with enrollment. So you can see what their budgets are. Barton is surprisingly low on their annual budget. Not every county has the resources that we have, so we're fortunate with that, with the growth of capital investment in Wyandotte County. So this chart looks at the percentage of total expenses that are spent for instructional purposes. Comes from the same source that we were talking about. If we look at 2019, our latest area, you can see that we are the highest in the percentage of our total budget that we assign to instruction. Not saying that that's a bad thing, but as if those numbers get extreme, then it can cause some financial hardship for the institution, though. So we have that, and I think we do. So as an institution, and as we look at this from a fiscal perspective in relationship to the overall institutional budget on this 4-year trend, you can see in 2015, we were at 39, call it 40%. Then we're up at 42.6, down a little, 41.3, 44%, 44%. So over the time frame, we have moved up about 4.5% of our budget going towards instruction. The other colleges, as you can see, most of them have been trending downward. There's some there are characteristics why that might occur. And it's a number of not just faculty, but the number of supporting staff, professional employees. It includes instruction, it includes advisors, it includes librarians, it includes lab assistants to help out in the technical labs. But we do need to keep an eye on this, especially as our enrollment is decreasing. So we have to keep an operational balance with that. This chart, it looks at, and I'm pulling this out because we've been asked some questions as this is the year that we do our faculty negotiations. So as we're preparing information to share for that, and also as instructional area is a significant part of why we are here as a college. This is why I'm spending a little bit of time looking at this. So as an institution in the state, KCKCC has the highest paid faculty in the state of all of our community college partners. Again, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just stating a reality of where we are. The Johnson County, if we look at the different ranks, we can see that we do pay higher for each of these individual ranks. As we look at being competitive with our metro neighbors and paying competitive salaries, we do look at these items. Johnson County Community College has an endowed faculty rank, which skews this number here. None of the other institutions in the state have an endowed faculty rank. So when we look at these are the instructional faculty and salaries.
Dr. Mosier,
Yes.
what's the difference in endowed and tenure? Does Johnson County have tenure faculty as well? Or what's endowed as compared to
Yes.
the tenure of our faculty? Because don't we have a lot of tenure faculty or a lot of longtime faculty?
We do. And an endowed is like a special award given to a person that is awarded for a special privilege or something that they have done or accomplished that is not a direct relationship to tenure. I don't have a good example right at this moment, but it's different than tenure.
But they do have tenure faculty as well.
They do.
Yes. And do these numbers take into consideration tenure, or is this just?
These are all faculty.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
Anybody in any faculty member that falls into these ranks. Instructor, I believe, is our non-tenured rank, and if after the 3 years, then they go to being tenured and into the professor category.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Again, the other colleges that I'm highlighting in the bars are where the board has asked for additional salary information. So as we look at a comparison, our all rank category for KCKCC is about $9,000 higher than Butler, which is a 16% difference. Hutch is about $10,000, so 19% difference, and Barton a $13,000 difference, so a 27% difference. So we do want to be competitive, but it's important that everyone is aware of where we stand in our compensation.
Dr. Mosher, I have a question.
Yes.
Are benefits included anywhere in here? Because I know historically we've had a column that had the amount of dollar benefits that instructors received at other colleges as well. And that's where you could really see a lot of the additional compensation. Do we have a benefit column here?
So I'll touch on benefits in just a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So if we look at these institutions in comparison to headcount, I've also added that because I know there's some questions about headcount and compensation in relationship to size of the institution. And then I've also added what the total expenses are. So when we looked up at the other chart and it showed the total expenses for the year, we were at 75 million. These are the operating expenses for the other institutions. So in regards to benefits, health, dental, etc., on benefits, our faculty for health for the longest time have paid $25, either a pay period, which is twice a month, or a month. Our staff pay $500, $600, $700, $800 a month. So our professional employees, our faculty pay very minimal when it goes into health benefits. And it's similar, at least I know Johnson and Metropolitan have a nice health package for their employees as well, but there is a significant difference in the amount of our professional employees or our faculty pay towards health benefits, dental benefits than our staff do.
Is that built into their contract?
It is, and it's something that we were able to work with the faculty 2 years ago on. We adjusted it started at 25%, but as our health benefits increase, the increase that is assigned is, let's say it goes up 9%. The 9% is calculated on what the market rate would be versus the $25, because 9% of $25 is not any kind of significant difference that would help the institution with its health and benefit costs. So for example, I think last year the rate went from $25 to about $31 or $37, dependent upon which plan is chosen, whether it's the I-90 or the regular PPO plan. There are 4 different plans that can be looked at. So benefits is not a significant financial burden on our faculty.
Is that amount they pay including their family? Is that just for the faculty member?
I will have to double check that. I know it's for the employee only. And I'll have to double check on that other. I think it's inclusive for the faculty that is their rate, but I don't want to be quoted on something I'm not 100% sure on it at this point.
Because if it's a
Dr.
staff,
Mosier, I can answer that real quick. The contract only specifies for the faculty the rate, the insurance, the medical and dental insurance rates for those who are on the employee-only plan. If they're not on the employee-only plan and they're choosing dependent plus or family plans, then they pay the same rate as all of the other employees do relative to that.
This was, yeah,
So anyway, yeah.
okay, yep, thank you.
thank you.
If we wanted to break it down a little bit more, we can look at, and this comes from iPads again, it's the group with the 33 other peer institutions. So we have the KCKCC faculty salary at those different ranks, the average at those different ranks, the iPads group, the dollar difference, and then the percentage difference. So that's off the iPads group. Again, with Johnson County Community College, this is that endowed level. But if we look at the instructional faculty rate, we are paying a little bit more for professor and associate professor, and then about 7.5% more for the assistant professor. This is for Butler. We pay, these dollar amounts more, 8,000, 17,000, 26,000, 20,000 more than a faculty member at Butler. And these are the percentages of difference that we pay. At Metropolitan Community College, they don't break down into these different instructional categories, but we're $688 less than that. So we're very comparable and very competitive with our metropolitan neighboring colleges, and we pay a pretty significant premium in relationship to our other areas across the state. To help with some of the questions that were asked in regards to cost of living, KCK cost of living is 81.6 on the chart. Wyandotte County is 83. Jackson County is at 86, so just a little bit higher. Johnson, so we're anything under 100 is below average for the country. Anything above 100 is above average for the country. So the cost of living index for Johnson County is 107. Wichita and El Dorado, where Butler is at 82, and 76 is the county. These are just the points that are the points difference. So then if we look at it of our cost for instruction per FTE, and if you'll recall, FTE is 30 credit hours. So if we take the number of credit hours, we would call it sold by the institution, the number of credit hours we generate revenue for, and we divide it by 30, that's that's the number of FTE. So we take our instructional expenses, whatever dollar amount that was, and we divide by the number of FTE that we have. That's how we come up with these rates. Now you'll see I did highlight and indicate that as of right now, we are 36% higher than the second place institution, which is Fort Scott Community College, which is at $6,663. And you can see everyone else is below that. Now, there have been some questions, why and how does that happen? How do we get so far out of whack? And this one, I'll say we are out of whack on our cost per FTE. Our enrollment has declined over the course of the years. We've kept our faculty level about consistent, some fluctuation here or there, but it has not changed in relationship to the number of students that we serve. And then we have the highest salary for faculty. And then our students are transitioning more to part-time students instead of full-time students. So instead of one student taking 15 credit hours in the fall and the spring, so that one student equals one FTE, our students average 8 or 9 credit hours. So it takes twice as many students to equal one FTE. Does that make sense? So our FTEs are decreasing quite a bit more than even our head count is, because our students are having to work and go to school, so they can't take as many credits. So the institution isn't earning as much tuition and fee revenue as we would if it were a full-time student. And then our faculty salary is another indicator there. So we have two numbers that are really working against each other, which will continue to create this significant difference. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, I keep looking over here because I have my Zoom window over here.
Yes, and there were some other factors years ago that put the faculty salary higher, and it's some of the history, and I don't know if you have time or want me to go into it. You know, the what do I want to say, the reputation, the appearance that Wyandotte County has. And for Dr. Burke, I remember Dr. Burke always emphasizing the level of education that our faculty had. Nobody really wanted to come to Wyandotte County. And so to attract the best and the brightest to Wyandotte County, that was why some of the salaries for faculty started off higher, just to get people to want to come to Wyandotte County, because there was such a negative thing about Wyandotte County. And for those of you who live in Wyandotte County, you know what I'm talking about. And so that was Dr. Burke's strong card there, is to say, we've got more faculty with PhDs and doctorate degrees, master's degrees, in order to get people to want to come to Kansas City, Kansas Community College. And so Johnson County doesn't have to do that. Just by where they are, people are going to want to go to Johnson County. They have a bigger pool to work with. So that's some additional information for why faculty got started higher than they probably normally would have. It was just to attract them, because no one wanted to come to Wyandotte County. And I'm sure Dr. Daniels, as superintendent of schools, you remember that. And so that was part of it. So, and then their tenure. But I'll stop there. Just some additional information for the people who don't know why it got like that.
His history is important. I'm not saying that it's not important, but I'm just reporting on where we are today. Yeah. So if we look at on the bottom, KCKCC is 84% higher than the average when it comes to instructional costs per FTE. We are 43% higher than Johnson County Community College in cost per FTE, 36 higher than Fort Scott. And then just for comparative purposes, I looked at what Metropolitan Community College rate is, and their instructional cost per FTE is $5,342. So we are 70% higher in our instructional costs per FTE. So it's great to have wonderful and educated faculty, but it does become a budget issue for the institution. So as administration and as a board of trustees, we need to be aware of this information, so that any any decisions that need to be made will be able to be made on the data. This is just looking at, oh, this is the iPads. So if we look at our instructional cost per FTE, for the dark blue is KCKCC. The 5495 is our iPads cohort. So we're about 65% higher than our cohort. So that's across the country, looking at similar institutions, possibly in similar environments as well. And then this just looks at it by rank. So I will share this PowerPoint so you have all the individual numbers as well. And then this just shows the institutions who make up the DFR cohort, which is what is used with iPads. And you'll look at some of these and you'll think, well, that one's not a very great fit, and another one will be. But just pure transparency that these are our comparison group institutions. I know I'm going a little deep, but as we're talking about budget, I do want the board to be fully informed. So looking at anticipated revenue declines for this coming year in regards to our standard funding mechanisms. So Mike has put together a scenario, two different scenarios. Scenario one looks at total tuition and fees being flat for next year. Flat is as where we are today, because we have a big decline, right? I anticipate we'll be flat or we'll be up. We just don't know. The national reports are saying that there could be a delay with students coming back, and other reports say that it will go up. So we look at that, and scenario two says it's going to be a 5% increase. So this year we've experienced a 15% decrease. So this means we would come up 5% from that. These numbers are a little bit old compared to some of the latest conversation that is coming out of the Capitol. So the scenario one is a 5% cut in state aid, and scenario two is a 3% cut. With tuition and fees, I imagine we'll be over here with an increase. Latest conversations coming out of the state is that there may be a 2% decrease above what was already anticipated. And then Excel and CTE, a cut of 15% and a cut in 8%. And that's just yet, to be seen. So between the two, we're anticipating an average reduction in these we call operational revenues by about $2 million. So from a fiscal standpoint, that is what we're looking at or planning on. So we are looking at strategies on how do we work with the budget that's in front of us. So the zero-based budgeting that we've been doing for several years is working. It's helping out quite a bit. We're looking at department level reductions and reductions and say like travel. We don't believe we're going to be traveling for a full year. So we can pull back travel for our departments, maybe by 30–40%. Right sizing through attrition with our staffing as we have fewer students. If we have people who are retiring or transitioning out, maybe it's not the right time to replace that position. We're looking at reassigning where possible, where we have areas that because of the student decline, we have more staff per student ratio than we previously did, and we have another position where someone left the institution that does need to be refilled. We're looking at how can we transfer our staff within departments, and that way we can keep our people here. Correcting program proliferation, I'll show some images on what that is. And what that means. And institutional effectiveness, how can we be more effective as an institution? We have fiscal accountability to all of our taxpayers and our county to make sure we're operating as fiscally sound as we can, and making sure that we maintain the level of instruction and education and services that we want to continue to provide. And then utilizing some of the one-time monies that we're receiving in relationship to the HERF funds, HERF 1 and 2, and we can use those to invigorate growth. This is a little bit on program proliferation. So anything that is in red right here in this area are sales, are programs that have less than 10 declared majors in a program area. So if we have less than 10 declared majors, we're not going to have enough students to work them through to obtain their degree. So sometimes program proliferation is just when we continue to add programs or certificates, but we don't have the student count to support it. A couple of different examples I just pulled out, and Jerry Pope is working in this area with the health faculty, exercise science faculty. We have degrees that we don't have any students that are declared, and if we get a couple of them, that means we have to teach additional classes to a class size that may have 2 or 3 students in it, and that's very expensive. So instead of having these 8 or 9 programs, we probably only need 3 or 4, focusing on where are the students telling us, you know, what programs they want to be in, and that's these white areas here. This is just another example. Sales here have less than 5 completers or graduates. So we have 10 different degree of certificate options in computer engineering, computer science, computer software. We don't need 10 because we're having to teach too many of these offshoot classes like limbs on a tree. So we need to cut this in half probably, right? And if we have half as many awards, and then we don't have all the little branches coming off the side with a few students in those classes, then we can still offer the programs that are important to our community, but we can do that in a more efficient manner and to help our students be more successful.
Dr. Mosier?
Yes.
Just one screen back on the early childhood education program. Now, until fiscal year 2020, they had relatively high numbers. And so for example, for academic year 2019, they had 26. So, and the year before that, they had 84.
Yeah.
And so are all those students prior to 2020 through the program and graduated? I doubt it, because most of them go part-time. I just wouldn't want to see that program, the early childhood education program, go away because they only had 8 declared majors for 2020, because that's one that's really
important. Yeah, that's important. So that's not one that we're looking at again. So it's a majority of white. Something has happened right here. Wages, there's all these considerations, and why I mentioned these is because there's 8 or 10 different options. We don't want to get rid of the exercise science program. We just need to have fewer specifications, right? Where they can specializations. So we're not, this is something that it concerns us with these numbers, but we're not looking at getting rid of it. This is a high demand job. It may not be high wage, but it's high demand. It's in high need.
Yes,
So,
that's exactly what I was getting at with the early childhood. I understand that about the exercise science because there are a lot of options, but
right.
early childhood education, that audience depends on the community college to educate the people who are going to work in our local childcare centers. Okay, all right, just want to make sure that that wasn't going away because that is really needed, yes.
Oh, no, that you're exactly right. And I always use the example when the state is talking about pulling funding for that. I'm saying, okay, well, if you're an engineer and you're an IT specialist and you're a doctor and you need childcare, what are you going to do? Where are you going to send your kids? Because we don't have anybody in the business.
Yes.
So there's a tie there. So we're just looking at areas where it just, there seems to be a proliferation of awards. So we'll still keep this, some of these in the exercise sciences, but we just don't need all of them.
Oh, yeah. Well, as I said, I was talking about the early childhood education because that's the only program we have on that. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. So as far as looking at those types of numbers, I think that's it for that. I've shared some of these numbers with you as well. So we do have these funds that are available to us. HERF 2 is what we have received during this last year, and we have until December to expend that. And it's used to make up for losses, but it is one-time monies. And then the students portion is for student aid, which we're giving out a significant portion of that now. And then we'll start awarding some of this HERF 3 now as well. So this is the one kind of, it's one-time funds, and how can we use this to stand up programs, which there are ways that it can be done. So we use these HERF institutional funds to pay for salaries or portions of salaries that the institution would have paid for anyway. It's a perfectly eligible cost and way to expend the HERF dollars. And then these become institutional dollars now, and we can use those because we need a program in high voltage. I bet we would have 60 students and they would graduate making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. So how do we stand that up? How do we use the automation engineering? We need a couple $1 million worth of equipment. That's how we can use this money for the long-term benefit of our community by providing those programs that are going to be in need for many years to come. This kind of just gives a recap financially of what we anticipate in some financial savings by taking these actions. So we estimate about a $2 million decrease in operational revenue, I'll call it. So we're trying to do an operational savings in operational expenses. And with that, before we go into further details, which will go into executive session for, I would ask if there are any questions, or Dr. Daniels, how you would like to proceed.
Yeah, I just, if there's any particular question that the board members have over what's been presented here, lots of good information.
It's a lot to absorb, I understand. So I'll send you this, so you have it to review further too.
Yeah. And there will be chances to ask questions at future meetings. This isn't the last time. Good presentation to start with, and things for people to go back and look at. But yeah, good information for us to look over. But I said we've got time, but time is running out because the administration working on the budget, so they're going to have some decisions here before too long. So good presentation. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, Dr. Mosier, I guess we're ready to go into executive session.
We could get a motion for that in 15 minutes. Is that?
Okay, the motion is executive session for Greg. Is Greg Goheen with us?
I am.
Hi, Greg. Good to see you.
How you doing?
Okay, the motion is executive session for consultation with an attorney for the public body or agency which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship, with possible action to follow an open session, 15-minute duration. Open session will take place online in the virtual meeting room. So I need a motion to that effect, or a motion, please.
So moved. So moved.
no greater love than what I feel for you. Love, so heart so true. There is no greater thrill than what you bring to me. Song and what you sing to me, 'cause you're the sweetest thing. And to think that you are mine. No greater love than all the world is true. Love and what I feel for love and what I feel for love and what I feel for you. Yeah. Sometimes it's soft as a misty rain that gently touches my soul. I can't escape it surrounding me, and I'm about to lose control. So just rain down on me. Just fall like rain, just rain on me. Just rain down on me. Let your love just shower me. Just rain on me. shoes. You might say I've been around, but back when I got started, there was a righteous sound. It doesn't matter what I've been through, I'll still be digging on James Brown. The more things change, the more they stay the same. It may be a different age, but I'm on the same page. There's one thing that I found, I'd still be digging on James Brown.
I had an attitude adjustment. I did some psychotherapy.
Dr. Daniels, I think I see everyone back
Everybody's-
now.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
everybody's back. Okay, we're back into open session. I want the record to reflect, Riesla, if you can get this. When we went from open session into the executive session, we had a motion by Trustee Brown, and we had a second by Trustee McIntyre, but we got switched before we heard the vote. But I know everybody voted in approval, so the record should reflect that it was voted on and the executive session was approved, and we did have a motion and a second for that. So we were okay in going in, but Riesla, we need to reflect that we didn't hear the vote, but we know everybody voted for it. So that's the good thing.
It's
Okay.
noted.
So we're done. Dr. Mosier, you have anything?
The only other item that we had is because of with Senate Bill 13 in the works, and we're going to need to be following that process. So I asked CFO Mike Beach to just share a little bit of information. It'd be 10 minutes
Sure.
or so if we have time this evening.
Sure, let's do that. Yeah.
Okay, Mike, I'll let you take it from here, and I think you have a screen to share.
Yeah, thank you. Let me see if I can pull this up. Can everybody see that all right?
Yes.
Okay. So some of this information was covered when we did the financial training with the board, but we felt that because of the timing and the newness of all of this, that it would not hurt to go over it again, just so we have an opportunity to address any questions, and that we're more specifically aware of the impact that this may have on the timing centered around budget adoption and what we've done in connection with previous years. So I just have 3 brief slides here to go over with the group. It just kind of talks a little bit about both Senate Bill 294 and Senate Bill 13. Both of these Senate bills address this issue of what is referred to as property tax revenue neutral rate. And I'll go through and explain this briefly again. Senate Bill 294 was passed, I believe, 2 years ago and was anticipated to go into effect last year, but then it was deferred for 1 more year. Then Senate Bill 13 came out this year and put additional requirements on, primarily on counties, but also on taxing entities relative to the timing and the notifications of what is expected to transpire under, in relation to this new concept of revenue neutral rate. So how it works, because property values generally increase year over year, property owners pay more property taxes even in years when the mill levy is not increased. Due to pressure to hold the dollar amount of taxes constant or at least as low as possible for taxpayers, the legislature introduced and passed Senate Bill 294 and Senate Bill 13. The year-over-year increase to the college that we're talking about here in property tax revenues due to increases in property valuations alone can be anywhere from about $300,000 a year to as much as possibly $1 million a year. We've had both of those in recent years for the college, again, depending on how much the property value increases from year to year. These dollar amounts can be realized in the operating budget of KCKCC without increasing the mill levy. And so, and again, if we go back through budget documents, we'll be able to track that and show that. Under Senate Bill 294 and Senate Bill 13, the college will be required to hold a public budget hearing if it intends to capitalize on the revenues generated from normal annual increases in property valuations. This is referred to as exceeding the revenue neutral rate. Let's see, there we go. It was slow to transition slides. So what is the neutral rate process? Senate Bill 294 and 13 go into effect this fiscal year for this next fiscal year ending in June 30, 2022. So for this next budget cycle, they're very much into effect. It introduces an added requirement for taxing entities to have public hearings if they intend to exceed their revenue neutral rate. SB 13 requires county clerks to provide all taxing entities their uncertified revenue neutral rate calculation by June 15th of each year. So we should be getting something from the county clerk relative to the college's calculation. I'll also be able to show you that for the most part, as a college, we'll be able to hit that number pretty close during the budget process and have these discussions well in advance of June 15th. The board will need to approve its intent to exceed its revenue neutral rate if that is their intent, or if they also intend to increase the mill levy by July 15th. So we have to communicate this to the county clerk by July 15th. So this is an added stipulation that we never had to do before. So if the decision of the board is to exceed the revenue neutral rate going into this next tax year, then we'll need to have a board meeting either in June or earlier in July than the third week of July, where the board approves and acknowledges the fact that it is their intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate. So we can notify the county clerk by July 15th. The college will need to advertise a public notice with the place, date, and time of the meeting, and the calculation and the increase of the revenue neutral and the increase in revenues provided by the revenue neutral rate, or the increase in the mill if we're also increasing the mill levy. SB 13 also requires the college to notify the county, as previously indicated, by July 15th. The county has the requirement of mailing out through the mail system a public notice, but then bills the college for the cost of that mailing. So we're going to have an increased cost to postage, all related to this to these Senate bills. It is anticipated that while SB 294 allows an extra month for this process going into the end of September, that the college should still be able to complete the process during our normal July and August timeframe that we've historically done. It may just require having discussions earlier about the budget rate and if we intend to exceed that revenue neutral rate. So how the revenue rate is calculated, the revenue neutral rate is calculated basically as follows. You take the dollar amount of the prior year ad valorem taxes that were levied, and you divide it by the total assessed valuation estimate of the current year, and then multiply that by 1,000. If we use all of our numbers relating to last year's tax information, this is an example of a calculation. Our total dollar amount that we derived off of ad valorem property taxes was $37.7 million. The valuation for that year was $1.4 billion. Dividing those two numbers and multiplying by 1,000, we get a revenue neutral rate of 26.048. The college's prior year mill levy rate, in order to generate $37.7 million, was actually 27.381. So we didn't increase the mill, but that 37.7 million was generated because people's valuation in the property went up. And so, but the mill levy rate was 27.31. Accordingly, if this bill had been in effect last year, we would have in essence been exceeding our revenue neutral rate by 1.3%, and we would have had to have a public budget hearing in order to declare and give the community members, the residents of Wyandotte County, an understanding of how much money we were going to be generating from and what that revenue neutral rate was and what our actual mill rate was going to be. And then I just stipulate here, even though KCKCC did not increase the mill levy rate, in this example, a public budget hearing would still be required. So this is kind of in short, the process. I know that it may be confusing to some, so I am more than happy to entertain any questions that anyone in the group may have relative to this change.
Mr. Beach, thank you. We already have a budget hearing, I believe, July, August sometime. Would this be an additional hearing, this change, or would it be part of the same budget hearing that we already have?
It can be part of the same budget hearing that we already have in the process, as long as we hold whatever meetings are necessary in order for the board to make a decision on the revenue neutral rate, enabling us to notify the county by the July 15th deadline. So that's really the only thing that changes in this process. We can still do the public hearing in August if we choose to, but we also have an extension to move it into September if we choose to. I'm not advocating for that. I think we should stay on the same calendar that we have and just have some advanced conversations in order to be able to make the decision as a board of what our plans are relative to the revenue neutral rate, so that we can communicate that to the county and then prepare for the corresponding budget hearing.
So the communication to the county has to be before July 15, right?
Correct. Yep.
So we would,
Of our intent.
normally we would make that decision in July anyway, but we're going to have to move it up a week or so.
Yeah, so normally you're correct. We normally in the board meeting in July is when the board basically acknowledges or votes on the property tax revenues and whether we're going to increase or decrease the mill.
Yeah.
We need to do that earlier in order to be able to notify the county by July 15th. The presumption here is if we don't notify the county by July 15th that we're going to increase or have plans to exceed the revenue neutral rate, we will not be allowed to exceed the revenue neutral rate.
So what you're saying is we may have to move up both the July and the August board meetings?
That would be my recommendation, is that we move up the July board meeting so we can, to the second week, so we have plenty of time to notify the county by the 15th.
Or we would have to hold a special session.
Or yes.
If we want to keep our board meetings on schedule, if community members wanted to come and they know when it's offered, our normal board meeting, we would need to hold a special session. It could be brief, but that would be the other avenue to go.
Yeah, and this is Chris. Well, we could actually utilize part of the time slot that we normally use for the finance committee meeting, because there are some things I think we could probably compress a little bit in that particular agenda in order to make room for these discussions.
Is that early enough, Mike? Could be the second week.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the like for May and June meetings.
Yeah, so there's to Trustee Criswell's point, even though the calculation from the county isn't coming out until June 15th,
yeah,
the college will know what the impact, for the most part, will know what the financial impact on our budget will be in whether we maintain the revenue neutral rate or whether we exceed the revenue neutral rate well in advance of June 15th. So we can always have these discussions in the finance committee meeting and in the board meeting of June, even if we don't know exactly what the calculation is going to be. That doesn't mean that we can't, the board can't approve whether its intent is to stay with the revenue neutral rate as calculated or whether they intend to exceed it.
And we need to advertise that meeting, right, and allow opportunity for public comment, correct? I like the idea of the finance committee meeting time or right after.
You have to allow it as a public hearing. It's not just a board meeting. It has to be a public hearing so that the public has to have an opportunity to speak if they want to. And Mike, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but or do they have to have two separate public hearings? I think they can do them all on the same date at the same time, but I think they might have to go through the process of convening one and then closing it and then convening the other right afterwards if you do it.
Right, I think just like the property taxes, the
Right.
of the board to exceed the revenue rate doesn't require anything other than our normal board meeting. It's the public hearing in August with the actual budget hearing that where the public is invited and has the opportunity to speak to the mill levy or the revenue neutral rate before the board adopts that rate or the budget. So really technically only one public budget hearing is necessary in the process.
And we would advertise that the same as our other budget hearings with an announcement in the newspaper or electronic resources that we have here in the county community.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Any other further questions or comments?
No.
Thanks, Mike, for the information.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Beach.
Not sure it's good information, but good information, maybe not what we wanted to hear. That's what I'm have to say. Okay, I think we're wrapped. Dr. Mosier, anything else?
No, sir.
Need a motion for adjournment?
So moved, Chriswell.
Second, McIntyre.
Been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Everybody have a good evening.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Take
Thank you,
care.
everyone. Have a good
Talk to you
night.
soon.
Night.